Welcome to Culturenomics with Arjun. The show aims to unravel the layers of the fintech sector and the rapidly evolving tech startup ecosystem across the MENA region and beyond. I am your host Arjun, and I will be inviting founders, executives, investors, regulators, and other influential stakeholders to discuss and dissect the highs and lows of their own ventures and how they foresee the wider ecosystem evolve. Join us as we celebrate success and the spirit of risk-taking, the candid discussion that goes past the timid question and cautious answers. This show is produced in collaboration with Adyan, a reliable end-to-end payment solutions provider that enables businesses of all sizes to turn payments into a strategic growth driver. We're also brought to you by Lulu Financial Group, a global financial services provider headquartered in Abu Dhabi, UAE, and operating in 11 other countries. Finally, Culturenomics with Arjun is brought to you by M2P, Asia's leading payment infrastructure company that enables businesses of any scale and size to embed financial products. Welcome to this episode of Culturenomics with Arjun. I'm your host, Arjun Singh. Today I've got big tech in the house. I'm joined by Roberto Croci, who's Managing Director of Microsoft for Startups for the Middle East and Africa region. Roberto, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Arjun.
Right, I hope you're comfortable.
Very comfortable. Right. I can stay here, longer.
Right. Let me start. What feels very strange is I feel like I know you forever, right? And actually we've only met the first time today, right? I don't know, I think we've been corresponding for well over a year, if not longer. Thank you for taking out time and coming today.
Pleasure. Looking forward. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
So we're going to dive right in. Let me just start with the concept of Microsoft for Startups, right? I'd love to hear from you, what is the ambition, right? So what is the point of arrival, if I may call it, for Microsoft for Startups? And if possible, can you kind of sort of bring it to life for us with some examples of startups that you have worked with in the MEA region and brought them to fruition?
Yeah, 100%. So the whole point of Microsoft for Startups is, from a Microsoft perspective, we definitely want to build more future customers for Microsoft, right? So we start investing early on in companies, startups, where we see potential, and we try to nurture them with the hope or the willingness to return future customers for Microsoft. This is from a broader Microsoft perspective.
Sure.
From our perspective, though, as we are embedded into the ecosystem, right? So we also understand the dynamics of what it is to be a startup. So for us, the real success is trying to make these startups and the founders, the entrepreneurs, successful. Mm-hmm. But what does that mean? So when I started 2.5 years ago, when I started in the role, there was no one covering at Microsoft here, right, by role, working on startups. So my role was to set up the mandate, the vision, and the strategy for what we really want to do in the region, right? So the idea is there is already a bunch of other players, other tech giants that are working successfully with startups, right? So the idea was not to try to build another Me Too or a copycat or another program that is the same thing that is already there, right? So the idea was, why don't we try to change the narrative from credits, which all cloud players are giving to startups, right? So you give the credits, it's like fishing in a pond, you hook the startups and you hope that some of them will become extremely successful so you can generate cloud revenue. So that's fair enough. But to me, there is no value in the credits. First of all, they will expire. Second is they subsidize the cost of technology, but that should be a cost you have in your P&L. And actually, as a tech founder, I want you to turn that into why technology is not a multiplier of your success, because if you solve a real problem, technology can help you scale, right? So the thinking should be different. Mm-hmm. So the thinking was, okay, instead of looking at others, and we have been looking at others saying, let's learn from what others have been doing, because maybe they're not doing everything great. But also let's look at ourselves first. And they said, what is that Microsoft has as a strength that we can give to startups? And the strength I thought it was relevant was Microsoft is really strong with corporates and enterprises. Mm-hmm. And when I was telling this initially internally, people were telling me, why are you telling us this? We know that, but you're working with startups. So we are working with corporates and enterprises. And I say, that's the point. If we make that available to startups in a meaningful way, that's tremendous value we can add to startups. Because
truly,
we are working with corporates, right? So it's not that we are working with corporates. We are selling product to corporates, fair enough. But we have this buzzword, this very hyped word of digital transformation that we are discussing with corporates. What does that mean? To me, it means that there is a window of opportunity open. There is a conversation with the C-level, with the CEO or the C-suite of those corporates that are asking Microsoft, hey, Microsoft, how can you be a partner with us in our innovation journey? So I said, look, that's perfect. Because we can help you, dear colleagues, to be a trusted partner to those corporates. Because in that innovation journey, chances are we can help those corporates understand how to work with startups. If we do that, at the same time when we work with startups, we can connect them to corporates so we can accelerate their sales, their growth, opportunities.
Fair enough.
And we build a connected ecosystem. So to your question, what is it we're trying to do with Microsoft for Startups is we want to build this connected ecosystem, right? Because if we do that, we can really help corporates in their innovation journey. We can help startups with sales and growth and you know, their development. Indirectly, we have more players, more solutions being developed on Microsoft technology. So there is a win-win-win situation and an ecosystem. Let's pick up, for example, in travel and tourism.
Sure.
We have been working with very closely, for example, with either Emirates, Etihad, Dubai Tourism. And we have startups, for example, that either one of them has been acquired by Emirates. One of them is basically the Emirates Red. This website is built by these startups, powered by Emirates. They are digitizing the duty-free experience, for example. And they have direct access to a corporate like Emirates with the access to their clients and audiences, right? So they could scale their solutions immediately from day one. This is one example. Another example is the work we're doing on financial services. So on the fintech side, we have multiple examples there of, first of all, on those regulated industries, we are still the tech player with local data centers, 2 regions, Dubai, Abu Dhabi.
Sure.
So for startups that are building solutions in that area here, it's a natural choice, right? So we are also working closely with ADGM and the IFC, the 2 regulators. The ADGM, for example, is building this digital lab, which is built on OneConnect and Azure, basically. So it's hosted on Azure. So it's a test environment where basically fintechs can deploy their solution and have a bank in a day environment where they can test, deploy, access to real data, and you know it's an easy time to implementation, time to market. Then we have been working with great startups, take Taraboot Gateway, Nimcard, Spotty, Zina, Dapi, many startups enabled. So many startups that are developing in different part of the fintech ecosystem, right? So whether it's insurtech, buy now, pay later solutions, whether it's open banking, neo banking. So those are startups that are benefiting from access to local data centers, but also how we are connecting them with financial institutions, right? So there was an insurtech, for example, we helped here with what we call the co-sell. So they were selling to the largest insurance companies. So we helped them to close deals with 8 out of 9 of the largest insurance companies here in the UAE, and then taking them to other countries, so to access new markets.
So you're genuinely giving them an opportunity to scale up.
That's the point. Yeah, right. It's access to technology, so building better products that can be integratable with legacy systems, and that's the point. Especially with fintechs, for example, is one of those industries where we see it quite often. Is sometimes you come across great ideas, but founders that get in love with their ideas, it usually happens. And that idea cannot exist in isolation, right? So you need to build something that can integrate with legacy systems as well, because you are selling to those users, right? So, and sometimes you have to integrate your solutions with existing systems. So this is one thing, access to technology. The other is a scale up. Access to markets, access to corporates, how we can make that not just an introduction, but a process, right? So a process where we can help getting startups scale up close to closing those deals. And 2 ways we are doing that. One is purely for B2B solutions. We have this journey where we first take these solutions on the Microsoft Marketplace. We help them to publish the solution, but also to become transactable. And in a region like MENA, this is quite interesting because that marketplace helps reduce the friction we have across many countries, right? So take UAE, 60 free zones, 3 financial jurisdictions. You are a fintech founder, you have a lot of courage to start building from here. Then let's say you are successful in UAE, then you still need to go to Saudi, to Bahrain. So when you start transacting on the marketplace, you avoid a lot of these issues because you can transact on the marketplace, right? So you can really reach buyers on one click. And it helps you get traction or test markets where you don't have necessarily business development, right? So you get some traction. If you're successful there, it means also that you are a vetted solution by Microsoft. So you get to a maturity stage where we say, we are confident taking you to larger enterprises or corporates because you have achieved this status. Your solution is on the marketplace, is vetted technically from a security perspective, reliability is good, is enterprise graded and ready, and you are showing traction. When you achieve that stage, we mark you as a co-sell ready partner. That means we unlock more value from you because it's not only our team at that stage, it's the broader Microsoft, where the sales team have a sales quota incentive to retire quota if they help closing a deal with their clients. So it's not just, yes, access to market, I introduce you to my friends or my network.
Giving them the life cycle.
It's a life cycle until a closure because the sellers would have, and the partners, Microsoft partners as well in the channel, they would have a clear incentive to retire quota if they close the deal, right? So if they help the startup that achieve that stage to close the deal. So this is one way we help. The other way is we recently launched an accelerator, which is very much focused on corporate innovation. So the way it works in a nutshell is, first we reach out to 6-7 corporate partners every time, right? So we spend some time with them. We ask them to define together challenges that are burning points for them, right? Use cases, challenges that they're facing. We use then the challenges as inputs to go out there and say what startups we have in the region that either have a product that solves for those challenges or a product that we can customize, help them customize to solve the challenge, or they have a kick-ass team that can build a solution around the challenge. And then we take the startups, selected startups, into a 12 weeks program with the corporates and Microsoft on a journey, right? So we gamify the experience to progressively unlock value for the startups that throughout the 12 weeks. And unlock, first of all, the learnings on how startups and corporates work together on both sides. Sometimes we got POCs, paid POCs funded during the program. Sometimes it happened after the program. That's why we don't force it during the program, right? So because this is one of those things we cannot force within the 12 weeks. Last cohort, we got a travel tech startup with Etihad. They agreed on a paid POC after 5 weeks. But to me, that is an exception, right? So Etihad even had some budget aside to allow the startup to do the integrations with their system. So it was perfect situation, great example, but it's not a best practice because it usually doesn't work like that. And in other situations, we got 2 POCs that were funded after the program was finished because we're managing it also as a community, right? So for us, it's more in the 12 weeks is unlocking the learnings that corporates and startups can generate by working together with us there as a partner to be there, right? So to make people accountable, follow through the process, anticipate some of the needs or the challenges. For startups, sometimes is understanding procurement, understanding which department they're talking to, building stakeholders and sponsors, talking about their IP protection, making sure they have access to the data, the right data, things like that, right? So that they don't think beforehand, but then it's what makes the whole thing stuck when they are executing it. So we launched this accelerator. Second cohort is starting next week. We also have partners that are interested from a fintech perspective. So last cohort we had Akbank from Turkey, a large bank. This time we have PwC that have fintech related challenges. So we always try to represent certain industries that are also a priority for us, like retail, logistics.
How many people in the cohort?
We will have in between 15 to 20 startups each cohort, and 6 to 7 corporates. So it's a 3 to 4 startups per challenge per corporate, right?
So here I am, right? I've always been a closet founder. So I guess I'll live my life never founding a business, but I'll dream about it. So how does one get into it? So what's the mechanism as a startup to get onto the accelerator program?
Well, we did massive campaign, right, to announce it. We reach out to our partners, whether it's incubator accelerators or venture capital investors, right, to inform them, hey, this is going to happen, can you help us? To promote it to your community as well. And then the way we select startups is basically, first, I would say one is how relevant is the startup to the challenge and the corporate that for that cohort we have. And the second point is how we think the startup can make the most out of the program. Because sometimes we have great solutions that are already beyond that, right? So, and that becomes just a matching or business development, which we will do in anyway. So what we want to select is also startups that will benefit from the 12 weeks.
So Roberto, how ruthless are you? So you're going to select 15, 16 startups. How many people came through the funnel?
We are very ruthless. So first cohort, we received 3,000 applications and we got 15. This cohort, today Laura told me, the program manager told me we are selecting 20 and we received 2,700 applications this time.
So I should just give up, right?
No, the thing is, the accelerator is our depth program.
Right.
the startups that don't get into the accelerator, we still get them on board into our broader program.
There is a familia out there. There is a family.
It's a family. It's a family.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear, and that's good to be promising. Let me. I think you give me a great segue, right? So I'm going to ask an honest question. Please give me an honest answer on this, right? So obviously the startup ecosystem in this part of the world has been flourishing. I think retail commerce or e-commerce and fintech has sort of dominated the, I guess, the news waves, right? But from your perspective, if you take the broader MEA region, right, or you can split Middle East and Africa separately, whichever way you see, what are the building blocks that you think are very well positioned, are sort of well done, and where do you actually see some sort of gaps? And are there any glaring gaps which need to be sort of filled in? Let me feed into it, right? So before I actually started working for a consulting firm, I used to previously work with a very large conglomerate, right? And there was always this ambition in terms of driving our innovation, I guess, strategy through working with, nimbler, lighter, quicker-minded sort of startups. But in honest truth, we really never got it off the ground, right? So with that in context, what's working well?
Yep.
Where do you think are some big gaps? What's kind of your headline recommendations on that?
No, absolutely. As you say, there are definitely certain things that are working well, right? We see a momentum in the ecosystem, so we see a lot of energy around it. So there is something that is working well. There are some gaps that I think it's definitely important to be transparent on and try to address them, right, at the root of the problem, not just scratching the surface of some symptoms that we can say are there. So on the positive side, on what's working well, I think, one is I think government, right, so are contributing to this momentum, in my opinion. There is definitely a clear mandate to shift economies from oil to knowledge-based. Definitely, you can tell entrepreneurship is high on the agenda of most of the governments across the region. And that drove a number of things to happen in terms of changing regulations, policies. We have been seeing here in the last months in the UAE, right? So the bankruptcy law, the visas available, foreign ownership, and a bunch of things that are making more and more life easier for entrepreneurs and startups to set up and to build from here.
Great.
Still, there is many other things that can be done, and I think they have a roadmap, and you feel there is a roadmap to make it easier and easier. There is also energy and momentum, right? And this comes with the vision from the top, the leadership, the government. This comes from the fact that there has been many players here contributing to the ecosystem, whether it's incubators, accelerators, even the investors, companies that have been there to push the narrative and making attractive and showing that there is a support network and these sort of things. It builds momentum, great. We got some first exits, which now I'm mentioning the positive things, and we will touch base probably on the negative things, but we got some first exits that build some sort of momentum, right? Whether it was Swivel, Angami, then Karim, Souk, and this and that. So still a few little numbers, but definitely things that were not there before, we start seeing consistently more and more, even if it's still early stage, and that helps to build this momentum, I guess, right? So I would say net what has been good here is the incentives, the attention, the commitment, the sponsorship from government and other companies that say, okay, it's the right time to open it up and do more, and we will do more and more, and you see this growing. If you see the trend is definitely increasing in terms of size of investments, number of deals, size of deals. Quality of startups is increasing gradually. We see, we can see that.
There's a marked improvement.
So all of this is positive, right? So it builds. On the negative side, though, I think is still a nascent ecosystem, right? So, and we need to acknowledge that. That means that there are still certain steps or certain things that needs to be done in order to take it to the next level. So what are those things? I'm not necessarily saying this in an order, but I would say one thing is mindset. Mindset in terms of most of the times we have seen, and you mentioned it, right? Retail sort of delivery apps or e-commerce with fintech probably have been driving the scene, right? So very much consumer based or focused. But most of these businesses have been sort of Me Too copycats of other business models that have been proved successful elsewhere, and okay, let's localize them here. Fair enough, It's not a bad strategy if you have an exit strategy in mind and say, well, if I localize that, I have an exit strategy, I can make good exit, good. I think it's not enough. It's not enough, first because we have a number of problems that the region is facing, which is a natural first place you would look into to say, well, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm trying to solve problems, and there are still many across the region, so there is still a lot of work to do. And also the ambition, right? So sometimes the unit economics do not make sense. So definitely not in the UAE, and UAE usually is used as a test bed, and then you have scale to Saudi, or Saudi is a scale game, but Saudi is 35 million people, and you have 1.5 billion people in India, 2 hours flight, right? So you say, are we talking about scale or just a next step in your growth journey, right? So fair enough. So I think one thing is that the ecosystem needs to evolve, or to raise the ambition probably is the mindset, right? So why don't we start exporting technology?
Sure.
Why don't we start having entrepreneurs that from here build solutions to problems that we are facing at large, that impacts millions of people, and we're not exporting from here. So this is one thing. The other thing is investment, right? So on the investment side, we have seen definitely an evolution, but in my opinion, most of the regional investors are still a bit risk averse, right? So we see investment are polarized across late seed and pre-series A. So what happens before and what happens after? There are still some gaps there. Before, there is liquidity in the market, but so raising money shouldn't be an issue, but early stage, it's an issue. So what we should have is a funnel, right? So is the reverse triangle, right? So we should have real abundance at ideation stage, and gradually a funnel that shrinks as you have drop-offs, natural selection. I am not sure we have as much abundance as we could have in the very top of the funnel. And investment-wise, I'm not sure we have enough people that have availability of capital that are enabling young entrepreneurs to take the risks, because it's all interconnected. I think we start seeing some exit, but still is relatively little numbers, right? So we should have more of those things, and more connection also with international capital, what we call smart money, with access to opportunities. It's not just the money, is the real access to opportunities. We see some countries that are inflating valuations with the objective to achieve number of unicorns. To me, that shouldn't bother.
That shouldn't be a goal.
That shouldn't be a goal.
I agree with you.
Why are we stressed with having unicorns? You know, the stress should be, we should have businesses that can scale, and that can grow.
Solve real problems.
Solve real problems first, and then businesses that are healthy enough to scale. Another thing that I think should raise in terms of a gap in the ecosystem is the understanding of technology. Because on different angles, right? So if you go to a VC in the US today, chances are that VC would ask you even questions about what protocol you're using. Have you ever asked here a VC going deep into the tech stack of a startup here? No. Either because there is no need, because there is not enough tech on the startup, or because the VCs don't know really much about technology, or is in the middle.
I think it's a combination of both.
A combination of both. So I think we should raise the bar there, because the reality is, as we said before, for me, technology is an enabler, right? So technology achieves its beauty when it's embedded. It's like when we watch a football game and we talk about the referee. There's something wrong. He shouldn't be the main character, right? He should just do his job to manage the game. Once we talk about the referee, it means that we don't talk about the game, right? So it's the same thing. Technology should be as a multiplier of opportunities, because it helps to scale products, but shouldn't be the main character in my opinion. At the same time, I'm watching many pitches or judging many competitions. The problem is, people are still using technology here to embellish their pitches and say, by the way, my solution is powered by AI, by the way, this and then say,
I'm on blockchain.
I'm a blockchain, and say, what do you want to achieve with that, right? So maybe you don't even need to use that technology, right, to achieve what you're trying to do. So, but we need to elevate and raise the bar when it comes to real understanding of technology, because the reality is technology can really help to scale solutions once there is a real problem being solved, right? So I think it's a gap in the ecosystem that comes with education, skilling, starting from youth. It's connected to changing mindset, as we said before, but it's specific also to where technology can play a role.
Okay. Can I add 2 more points to it? And I just actually, I'd love for you to disagree with me if you want to, right? But this is just purely from an outside commentator's perspective. What's your view on access to talent, right?
Yeah.
And my second point is, in an economy,
as you said correctly, right? The UAE, 8-9 million people. I guess the addressable audience is small. Saudi is only 3 times bigger, 4 times bigger at 30 million. Yes, Egypt becomes bigger at 100, and then unfortunately there are certain countries which are in a geopolitical strife, so we can't do anything about it. Even in the non-oil economy, there is concentration, right?
Yep.
And what I see, and again, please correct me, is I don't really see the corporates, the large corporates, and I'm thrilled to hear that Emirates and Etihad and some of the other names that you've mentioned have taken a very progressive step. But do you by and large see the large corporates participate? Are they playing the role of catalysts, or are they just, apologies, I'm going to use the word, are they just playing lip service?
Beautiful questions, both beautiful questions. So let's go one by one.
Yeah.
Talent. My personal point of view on talent is I'm very disappointed when people tell me there is no talent in the region. I don't buy into that. I don't believe that. I think there is talent. Is the opportunity we are giving to talent to thrive that is not necessarily there. Let me give you an example. Yesterday I met with a former colleague from Google. He left, and he is the chief data officer at Zand, the neobank. Right? So he was telling me, we were talking about talent, and he said, look, I built a kick-ass team of 19 engineers from the region, all local talent. You need to know how to work with them, right? Okay. And the thing is, this guy knows how to code, right? So first of all, he can be a role model for these people. These people will follow him, and he can coach and empower them, right? So first, you need to know how to work with the talent that is already available. Second is, you need to give opportunity to talent, because if we look at the region, we have talent in the region. We do have. We can do more, yes, for sure. Then if we restrict to certain countries within the region, yes, it might be that certain countries started their activities to empower, to skill later on, so they don't have enough history, so they need to go out there and try to get the talent from the other countries close by, right? But at large, if you ask me, when we talk about talent, I believe we do have talent in the region. We need to empower this talent with real opportunities to allow them to thrive, to take risks, to show their talent, in execution. I think we need to do more, for example, to elevate, to raise the bar, to raise the ambition of this talent, make them aware that they have all what they need to be successful, but we need to equip them with the right knowledge as well, right? So for example, when we talk about technology, we want to raise the bar and really help these people understand how they can really leverage technology, et cetera, et cetera. So my point of view is that we have more talent than what we think in general, as a feeling. We need to do more, and this connects also to the second question, as private and public sector needs to come more together to make the opportunity available for this talent, to connect these two things, the opportunity and the talent. The talent is equally distributed here. There is talent. The opportunity is not. Okay. So we need to do more to make those opportunities available. On the corporate side, I totally agree with you. When I joined Microsoft in the first probably 4 months, I probably received about 20 corporates that reach out to me and say, hey, can you help us build an accelerator? And in my mind, I was thinking, 20 corporate accelerators, nah, I don't see this happening in the region. There's something wrong. Eh? So then my question back to these corporates was, hey, why do you want to build an accelerator? Let me understand first, right? Because I need to understand. And sometimes you get it, right? Sometimes it's oh yeah, my competitor looks more innovative, and you get, maybe it's a more, it turns into a PR, CSR.
I need to be looking to be participating.
This is one category. Then you see other corporates that is purely an investment, sort of diversifying the portfolio of investment, and they look at it more as they call it accelerator, but what they're looking for is diversify their portfolio, right? So fair enough, it could be a reason. And then you have the category of those corporates that are trying to see, hey, look, we heard about ambidextrous organization, we heard about being disrupted, it's coming to us, we need to do something.
Yep.
But again, without a real strategy. So I kind of acknowledge what you were saying, meaning I'm not impressed. And that, I think, is another gap.
Okay.
We don't have much R&D here, for example. And if you ask me where I see most success in the region here, is where I see certain focus, right? So we have a lot of incubators, accelerators that are very generalist, but honestly, in my opinion, they're more community hubs. So what you really get out of those experiences or those places, beyond the pure real estate, I give you some coffee, Wi-Fi, and this and that, which is okay, fair enough. I think it's more the community aspect of it, which is fine, it's great. Where I see real value being developed is when there was a focus, which takes, first of all, an act of courage, right? So an acknowledgement, say, hey, we are offering this to this startup because we know what you're doing, we have this expertise, and this is the value we can unlock for them. For example, we have been working with an accelerator that is focused on aerospace, defense, and security. They say they are very niched. They select 8 startups at a time, right? And they focus on the quality, but they are returning real value because, first of all, the people running that accelerator are from that industry. They have access to corporates, industry experts, mentors that can add value to those startups. It's not the first principle thinking that you still need at very early stage, but in order to give value, you need to take the startups towards that journey, right? So we saw another situation with something more focused on travel, tourism, and hospitality, and we see that with time, those guys got better and better, and maturity of startups getting out of that is better and better, and there is a value that these startups are getting out of something like that, right? So I think that where the corporate can add value, should add value, is in focusing on what is the strengths that they have and packaging it and finding a way to give it to the startups, right? So is it happening in the region? Not yet. We are lacking at large a connection between private and public sector and academia that come together and build something really connected, as you see in most ecosystems that are thriving, right? So you go to Israel, you go to UK, you go in the US, so those things are interconnected, right?
Yeah.
So you can find these things coming together and you have abundance of these things, so it happens naturally now.
Yeah.
This is still missing here. This is the R&D aspect of it and the connection between public and private sector. The other is, purely on the private sector side, is do you have an innovation strategy? Have you mapped what innovation initiatives you want to run? Because without that clarity, then how can you inform a system that allow you to search, synthesize, and select the startups you would like to work with? It's not just randomly, oh yeah, we want to show we're working with startups, so we are innovative. No, I don't see this done anyhow consistently from almost any of the corporates here in the region. There are corporates that are more advanced in the intention of, but still far from, and there are corporates that are not doing anything right. So I think we have a big gap, because also, when we talked before about, and this is all because it's all interconnected, right? When we talk about the exits, where would the startup exit today? Okay, they don't have to exit in this region, right? Necessarily. I mean, as long as the exit is fine. But if we try to have this ecosystem grow, right? So where are the opportunities for startups to exit in this region? And what corporates are doing to, provide these opportunities and to be more proactive into being part of the ecosystem. I think there is a big gap there that needs to be filled, and we need to raise more attention and keep talking with these corporates to make them aware and show them also what is that they would gain if they would be more into this conversation, if they would open up more to this conversation. Also, they need to understand what commitments should happen on their side, what sort of process they should put in place on their side, because most of them, they don't know.
Yeah. On that note, I think you and Microsoft are in a great place to start, I guess, influencing, educating, advising. Roberto, I knew when we started, you put an Italian and an Indian on a couch. 30 minutes would never be enough. But you know something? Thanks a lot for your time.
Arjun,
I
thank you.
Actually learned a lot. Right?
Me too, from your questions as well.
and to be honest with you, I think we should do a part 2, and maybe we do it with the Duomo behind us in Milan, right? I think that would be the perfect setting, right? So thank you for coming. That's all for this episode. I'd like to thank our guest, Roberto Croci, who's the managing director of Microsoft for startups in Middle East and Africa. I think I really thoroughly enjoyed his candid responses. And I'm actually quite happy that we were able to have an honest conversation. With that, goodbye, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Arjun.
Thank you, mate.